I would like to get right into it if we could. Now, let's start off with porn. Now, we've talked a lot about porn on our channel, and each time we watch porn, there's a flood of synthetically generated dopamine which damages the brain. And studies have shown this, that viewing porn damages the receptors, the dopamine receptors, decreases testosterone, leads to erectile dysfunction, anxiety, depression, depletion of minerals, and discharging of our sexual energy, which is our life force energy, our creator energy. Dr. Jones, could you touch upon the impact of porn from your research on the individual, firstly?
Well, I didn't deal with the biological aspect of it. I dealt with the mind, okay, which you need a brain to have a mind, but the mind is separate from the brain. And I decided to deal with it historically because there is a development here. Pornography is always a function of technology. So at the beginning, there are mosaics, pornographic mosaics that exist in Pompeii, but they're not all that accurate. They're not lifelike, and they're confined to walls on buildings. And if you don't go into the building, you're not going to see it. So it was limited in its scope. It existed, but it was limited in its scope. And then it disappeared, pretty much because Rome disappeared. And what replaced it was not as high a civilization as Rome. It didn't have that aspect to it. It came back technologically with the printing press. And not just the printing press, it came back with printing technology and also the ability to print etchings in books. And I'm talking about one book in particular. The book was Justine by the Marquis de Sade. The Marquis de Sade is the man who created the French Revolution, started the French Revolution from his cell in the Bastille, and also was the author of the subversive force that unleashed all of the passions of the revolution. He was very conscious of that fact. And at this point, with the Marquis de Sade, you see the political mobilization of pornography. He used it to undermine the Palais Royal, which was under the ownership of the Duke of Orleans, became a center for pornography. And the pornography started to serve a political purpose because a lot of it involved pornographic depictions of Marie Antoinette engaged in all sorts of sexual activity. At this point, the Marquis de Sade articulated what I think was the fundamental rationale behind pornography. It became the motive force, the motion behind revolution. So he said at one point that the moral man is in peace and the immoral man is in perpetual motion. Motion is another word for revolution. And so basically, if you want to be tranquil, you become moral. If you want to promote agitation, you can promote vice, and pornography will do that for you. Augustine said, "A man has as many masters as he has vices." He was a man who knew what sexual vice was like. He was addicted to it himself and had trouble breaking that habit. He is the one. What the Marquis de Sade did was turn that upside down. So in other words, if you want to promote peace, then you promote virtue. But if you want to promote revolution, you promote vice. And that became the beginning of the political implementation of pornography.
And how do we see that affecting the collective at the time in terms of the changes in the kind of the psyche, the collective psyche?
Well, what happened at that point is you had the what happened in France was in many ways the mobilization of the Whig oligarchs to overthrow the Bourbon monarchy. If you're talking about the individual psyche, you need to move on to the character of Adam Weishaupt. He was he was a professor at the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. He was the creator of a group called the Illuminati, which was like a Masonic lodge on steroids. He took Jesuit spirituality, in particular, the examination of the conscience, which basically, before you go to confession, you go through the list of your sins with the help of your spiritual advisor, and then you confess the sins, and then you're freed from the effects from the sin, and helps you get control of the effects of sin and the addiction that goes with it. Like the Marquis de Sade, Weishaupt turned this upside down. And so in other words, if you commit a sin and you want to be free from the sin, you have to confess it and say you're not going to do it anymore. The confessor here turns that upside down and says, first of all, he uses this examination to find out what your vices are, and then he promotes you in committing these sins. He promotes these vices because he knows that he can control you as a result of that. This led ultimately to psychoanalysis. Weishaupt called his procedure, he called it Seelenanalyse, which is the German word for soul, the analysis of the soul. Sigmund Freud just took the German word and turned it into Greek, and he created psychoanalysis. And psychoanalysis was exactly what Weishaupt had done. Jung and Freud, Jung was Freud's protege, began a competition to see who could get the most rich Americans. And so Freud ended up with Edith Rockefeller McCormick. Jung ended up with Madel McCormick, who had an addiction to vice, and basically you can keep acting out your vice as long as you come and talk to me about it. Your conscience will be, you'll feel better about it, and all you have to do is pay me money. So it was an instrumentalization of the whole notion of confession. Freud did the same thing. He had an American doctor who wanted to become a psychoanalyst. His name was Horace Frink. In order to do that, you had to lie down on the couch in Sigmund Freud's office. And during his session, Frink told Freud that he was having an affair with one of his patients. So instead of Freud saying, this is unprofessional, you're violating the code of the Freudian Psychoanalytic Society, blah, 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 he said, divorce your wife, marry this rich woman, and then make a big contribution to the Psychoanalytic Society. So what you're seeing here is this mobilization of vice as a form of control. All of what I'm saying here to you now is in my book, Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control.